Hello, and welcome to another reading wrap-up where I display not only my lack of artistic skills, but my tenuous grasp of the English language. But look, I have stickers! Revealing the stickers on this page was a lot of fun, but I was a little disappointed with the leaves. I love that there was a shoe similar to the ones on the cover though, except it has a bit more of a heel. How scandalous. You may think I have misspelled the title, but think again. It was one of Austen's little quirks, but it's screwing with my head because every time I write friend now, I have to double check to make sure I'm not writing it incorrectly. So thanks, Austen. Thanks a lot. This is a collection of Austen's earliest writing, starting from when she was 11. At that age, I was barely able to form a coherent sentence. I mean, I guess I still have that struggle, but whatever, this isn't about me. One of the most entertaining parts was her completely unbiased, non-fiction account of the history of England, in which she writes about, and I quote, that disgrace to humanity, that pest of society, Elizabeth. According to the young Austen, the Queen's biggest sin was her role in the execution of Mary Queen of Scots, who she praises at every opportunity. Regarding the Duke of Somerset, who was executed long before Mary, Austen writes, "He was beheaded, of which he might with reason have been proud, had he known that such was the death of Mary Queen of Scotland. But as it was impossible that he should be conscious of what had never happened, it does not appear that he felt particularly delighted with the manner of it." To accompany Austen's writing, her sister Cassandra drew portraits of each of the monarchs, except for Edward V because he died too young. I think they're really cute because you can just picture the two of them working together on the project. If you're going to read it, I would definitely take the time to read the endnotes to help you understand the context of her work. I don't have sufficient knowledge of the time period, especially the day-to-day domestic sphere she writes about, so had I not read those notes, I wouldn't have fully understood her mocking or satirical tone. I would just take it for granted that that's how things were done back then. I'm sad now. This is the last of her work. I've now read all of it. I may have to come back to this later and try to make it look a little nicer, but for now, I'm over it. The next book is The Art of War by Sun Tzu. I struggled so much with writing the title. I'm still not happy with it, but I couldn't be bothered to redo it again. I also wanted to include the Chinese title. I hope I did okay with it because I'm super out of practice writing kanji. My Japanese senseis would probably cringe and deduct points for my handwriting. But as I recall, my teachers from the Chinese department had god-awful handwriting and weren't as strict, so I don't feel so bad that this looks terrible. You probably won't be surprised to learn I do not have an army at my disposal, unless my subscribers care to assist me in engineering a new world order. Anyone? The book has two versions, one without and one with commentary. This includes notes from the translator, as well as interpretations from 11 commentators, ranging from the 2nd century AD to around the 12th or 13th century. I wanted to read it without, but I had to switch it up since I wanted more context. I still don't really understand much of it. If anything, this has sparked my interest in getting back into Chinese history. Since I likely won't be making the career change to Army General, I read this merely for funsies, except it wasn't all that fun. I kept falling asleep reading it. Who would have guessed an ancient Chinese military treatise, I can't say this word, does not make for a thrilling read. But isn't this a beautiful edition? Unfortunately, I can't mark it as complete though, because there's still a few other works I have to read in it. Behold, my lovely aged edition of The Provincial Lady Goes Further. I had to ship it in from the UK, and since filming this, I purchased a matching edition of the first book, The Diary of a Provincial Lady, which I read earlier this year and loved. I also grabbed copies of the 3rd and 4th books, and it was a bit expensive, but I wanted older editions. They're all from the 30s or 40s. The Provincial Lady Goes Further, alternately titled The Provincial Lady in London, continues the humorous account of our unnamed protagonist. Having published her first book, she navigates the literary scene in London while still struggling, to the reader's immense amusement, to maintain her rural household and family. One of the most entertaining parts of the story is in the beginning when the daughter Vicky convinces her mother to let her go away to school, which means that the family has to say goodbye to her caretaker. But nothing is ever so simple for the provincial lady. Mademoiselle plunges into a state of despair. She wears mourning clothes, refuses to eat, and offers to cut herself into 1,000 pieces. As the provincial lady attempts to calm her, she reflects that the French are extraordinarily exhausting to themselves and others in times of stress. Meanwhile, Vicky is completely, perhaps even a little disturbingly, unmoved by the entire spectacle, which just further solidifies her as my favorite character. From my understanding, it's largely autobiographical, so I'm curious how close the story was to Delafield's actual life. I can't say I love the sequel as much as the first book, as is usually the case, but it was pretty entertaining, and I could relate a lot to her procrastinating from writing. Gather round, children, I have a story to tell. One upon a time, there was an immensely fair maiden, in desperate need of a manicure, my God, who purchased a book from the fairy god peddler Amazon. She loved it so much that she bought 2 other books in the series, despite not having the room to store them on her sticker cart. It was a beautiful book, inlaid with over 1,000 stickers, and she would flip through the pages, gazing in wonder at the images, both big and small. But what were they of, she wondered, and who created them? She decided to consult the magic information rectangle. On her journey, she battled her way through notifications, updates, and a call concerning her car's extended warranty, all the while evading the clutches of the evil Doom Scroll, whose spell she had fallen under before. Finally, her battery almost depleted, she learned that the Boar Man was none other than the Beast from an 1874 edition of Beauty and the Beast. The tiny man battling a spider was Tom Thumb, and the chicken she didn't care about. Armed with this knowledge, she began journaling about a book called The World's Best Fairy Tales, which she liked well enough, except that Prince Eric was a big, stupid, blonde meanie. The end. The last book is The Turn of the Screw and Other Ghost Stories by Henry James. I used to have such an aversion to short stories, but I've really begun to enjoy them in recent years, especially since I can skip around and read them at my own pace. I read The Turn of the Screw in 2023, and it wasn't until this year that I finally finished the rest of the collection. To be honest, I don't remember The Turn of the Screw very well. I remember it's about a young governess who takes a job caring for 2 young orphans, and they're on a remote estate that turns out to be haunted, and she worries that the ghosts are trying to influence the children. If you think that's scary, here's my entry from my first reading journal. I really need to go back to 1 book per page, so I don't have to come up with so many words. My favorite story was The Third Person, which is about 2 distant cousins who inherit a house that is haunted by a distant ancestor. At first he terrifies them, but then, as the book's introduction says, he gives them a joint interest in the way a charming niece might in a Jane Austen novel. He is their weather, their politics, their news. It was actually quite humorous, and I would have liked to have spent more time with the cousins. My least favorite was The Jolly Corner, which was the last story. Couldn't tell you what it was about. I kept falling asleep reading it. I would say they're very complex, sophisticated ghost stories. Most of it probably went over my head, but I enjoyed them, and I plan on rereading them in the future. Let me know if you've read any of these or if they've made it onto your TBR list. Also, please feel free to leave any questions or comments down below. I hope you'll consider subscribing, and I will see you in the next one. Thank you for watching. Bye!
Fee, fee, fi, fi, fo, fo, fum.
New World Order, New World Order. I promise I'll be benevolent, maybe.
I smell smoke in the auditorium.
Charlie Brown. Listen to me.
Egad.